They've already developed missiles that can threaten Europe and our bases overseas, and they're working to build missiles that will soon reach the United States of America.
Well, look, Iran chants death to America, so you tell me if that's a threat.
My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen.
Today, we need to look at the Middle East, because what we're seeing right now is a classic calm before the storm. If you look at the movements of the US, Israel, and Iran, everyone is in a state of high readiness. But the most critical piece of the puzzle, the one that determines if this goes from a cold standoff to a hot war, is the United States. Right now, as we speak, the USS Gerald, our forward carrier strike group, has moved through the Strait of Gibraltar and is pushing deep into the Mediterranean. This isn't just a routine patrol, my friends. This signifies that the American military bridge to the Middle East is now complete for a serious strike on Iran. The Pentagon usually wants at least 2 full carrier strike groups in position. With the Ford and the Lincoln, they have exactly that. Let's pull up the map. If the US decides to launch a major air campaign against Iran's nuclear or missile infrastructure, they aren't just going to use carrier jets. They will bring in the big 3, the B-52, the B-1B Lancer, and the B-2 Spirit. But here's the problem: geography. If these bombers fly from the US mainland, they have to fly over 10,000 kilometers. That requires massive amounts of fuel, multiple mid-air refuelings, and 30+ hours of pilot fatigue. It's inefficient. So, the US bombers relies on 2 jump-off points: Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, RAF Fairford in the United Kingdom. Diego Garcia is about 3,700 kilometers from eastern Iran. RAF Fairford is about 4,000 kilometers from western Iran. Both bases are British territory, which is vital for legal and logistical reasons. Fairford, in particular, is one of the few places in the world where the US keeps specialized climate control hangars for the B-2 and massive stockpiles of precision-guided munitions. By staging here, the US cuts the flight time in half. It means they can fly more missions per day. If you see the B-2 landing at Fairford, you know the clock is ticking. Now, let's talk about the frontline fighters. The US has moved Air National Guard F-16, specifically the CJ Wild Weasel variants, to the Middle East. These aren't just normal F-16. Their job is S-80, suppression of enemy air defenses. They go in first to kick the door down by destroying Iranian radar and SAM sites. And they have a new toy, the Angry Kitten electronic warfare pod. It started as a research project in 2013 and saw its first major test in 2017. It's a derivative of the old ELQ-167, but it is vastly more advanced. The Angry Kitten uses cognitive radio technology. It can listen to the Iranian radar signal, analyze in real time, and then jam it or spoof it with a signal so complex the radar doesn't know what it's looking at. This increases the survivability of the fighter significantly. While the Angry Kitten confuses a radar, the F-16CJ fires an AGM-88 HARM that follows the radar's own signal down to the dish and blows it up. This is the high-tech way to win a war before the first bomb even hits a bunker. War is fuel. You can have the best F-35 in the world, but if they run out of gas over the Persian Gulf, they are just expensive gliders. The US has established a massive tanker bridge at Lodges Field in the Azores. This is the midpoint of the Atlantic. They have deployed the new KC-46A Pegasus tankers there. These things cost $140 million each and can carry over 90 tons of fuel. They also have the old, reliable KC-135 Stratotankers. The KC-135 is old. Some are 60 years old, but they still hold about 90 tons of gas. The difference is the technology. The KC-46 is automated and has better defensive systems, while the KC-135 is a bit of a manual flying gas station. But look at the concentration. Lodges Field is packed. The Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan is packed. When you see this many tankers, it means the US is planning for hundreds of jets to stay in the air simultaneously. Let's look at the Muwafaq Salti base in Jordan. Our latest intelligence and satellite estimates show at least 20 F-15E Strike Eagles, nearly 20 F-35A, more than 10 F-16, 6 EA-18G Growlers, at least 2 MQ-9 Reaper drones. And friends, these are just the planes parked outside. The hangars are likely at 100% capacity. However, notice the shift in Qatar. At Al-Udeid, activity has actually decreased. Why? Because Al-Udeid is very close to Iran. It's within easy range of Iranian short-range ballistic missiles. The U.S. is likely shifting its most valuable assets to Jordan or the Azores to keep them out of the first strike zone of Iranian retaliation. Now, the naval aspect. The USS Abraham Lincoln is already in the region, usually lingering about 700 kilometers off the Iranian coast. Why 700? It's a sweet spot. It's far enough to have time to intercept incoming anti-ship missiles, but close enough for the Super Hornets to reach their targets with minimal refueling. The USS Gerald, or Ford, is the big variable. It's the newest carrier in the fleet. It uses the MOs instead of steam catapults. This is supposed to launch planes faster and with less wear and tear. There have been reliability issues in the past. But this deployment is the Ford's final exam. If the Ford and the Lincoln link up, they will have over 130 combat aircraft. If you add the land-based planes in Jordan and Qatar, we are looking at over 250 advanced U.S. combat aircraft in a single theater. The Midnight Hammer logic is back. In past operations, the U.S. used land-based bombers staged in Europe and the U.K. to hit deep targets, while the carriers provided constant pressure air cover. If these two carriers reach the same sea, they can generate 800 sorties a day. That is a devastating amount of firepower, but we shouldn't think this is a one-way street. Iran knows they cannot win conventional air war against the F-35 and the Ford. So they have built missile garages, underground bunkers carved into mountains along the coast. They also have their swarm strategy. Hundreds of fast attack boats, some armed with anti-ship missiles, others acting as suicide boats. They also have the Shahid drones and loitering munitions. They won't try to fight the U.S. carrier group. They will try to saturate it. If you fire 500 drones and missiles at once, even the best Aegis destroyer might miss one or two. Iran is also reinforcing its nuclear sites with meters of reinforced concrete. They are preparing for a limited strike scenario, hoping to survive the first wave and then make the political cost of the second wave too high for the U.S. Politically, we are in a tight window. Donald Trump has stated clearly, no nukes for Iran. If negotiations in the next 10 to 15 days fail, the military option moves from a plan phase to the execution phase. But there is a catch. The allies, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and the UK have expressed they don't want a regional war. They are hesitant to let the US launch strikes directly from their soil. However, history tells us that once the first missile is fired, these bases usually open up regardless. The US has staged the largest military buildup in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. But unlike 2003, there are no 200,000 ground troops. There are no massive tank divisions. This tells us that if this war happens, it will be an air and sea war, fast, high-tech, and incredibly violent. So, everyone, what do we think? The U.S. has the carriers in place. The tankers are gassed up. The angry Kitten pods are ready to jam the radars. The logistics for a massive strike are 100% complete. But as we see in many conflicts, starting a war is the easy part. Managing the escalation is where it gets complicated. Will Iran blink? Or are we moving toward a Midnight Hammer 2.0? The next 2 weeks are critical. I will keep monitoring the satellite imagery and the carrier movements. If the Ford joins the Lincoln in the Northern Arabian Sea, the calm is over. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis helpful, please like the video and subscribe for more military updates. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next one.